Hey, what's going on? So I'm going to talk about a concept in political development, which is about imbalances. And this would have to do with, if anyone wants to start thinking about what reconstruction and a longer term ceasefire would look like in the Middle East, um, how Israel balances internal political pressures and all this other stuff. And so um, it's not a small thing. And so, one of the things you always want to get out of is reactiveness. And to me, the way you do that is you form an imbalance, which is based on deliberation and decision making. Deliberation and decision making. And what this does is it forces, in some ways, the reflexive and reactive aspects of our brain to focus on things that are tangible, real, and which have some distant enough space within the context. And so the parallel to this in like the UN language is something um, like um, I forgot what the acronym is, but when they're talking about like direct participation or something, when they're talking about like bottom up development and you want local groups and stuff like this to be important or more important or significant. Um, and so, what I would deeply encourage people to consider to make work um, is like this idea that you start having some form of these reconstruction groups which have permanent ties towards other institutions. They almost act as like a civil or social service or something like this. And the point is that instinctually, when groups on either side start thinking about wanting to keep going to do the conflict, the point is that you have all these other things that you actually should be thinking about. These are the things that you should be talking about, asking about. Most would say that it doesn't really matter where these things are structured as long as they're local, they're efficacious. They're seen as somehow consolidating. Um, so who cares? Who cares what these things are able to do? If it's the decision-making process in consolidation, then that's also what these groups should be doing. That's what they everywhere should be still doing, or more places and more frequently for everyone. Um, so, people might not always agree, but when you start building, like when you build the actual structure, the social structure of stuff like this, um, and you kind of assume that it's going to get complicated and messy and all these other things, and it always does. Um, the point is that normally day to day, these groups have these recognitions that they're professionalized. There's dedicated people working in them. There's knowable rules of access. There's transparency, and there's some form of consistency or predictability behind them. And if you can even layer on top of that they're strategic, they somehow are following the values or principles based on whatever it is, like a national identity, the sort of essence or whatever of these groups is coming from something like this, then that's what you should do. And that's also like really true, right? When we're looking at how will Israel, how will the West, how will the UN respond to this? How should they respond to something like that? Well, if you're arguing that you're developing the strategy and all this stuff and saying Hamas and Hezbollah can get what they actually wanted from the start, which is sort of this cultural approach to state building, then that is what you have and that is what you get. And the sort of, whatever you want to say, the exogenesis or, whatever, of this sort of bottoms up approach that has layering on top for some reason or whatever it is, well, then, those are all sort of part of that same thing then, right? Isn't that the simple way to sort of solve that? Is that you can argue that we're going to do lots of different things, but these are always going to be sort of, there's a bound of this institution, and the bound of that institution really is based upon your ability to see it, if that makes sense. And so, kind of getting there is, people always love to embrace like grandiose thinking and will say, this is grandiose thinking, and it's really not, because almost this entire time that I was thinking about this, it's not thinking about ways to continue a conflict. It's not thinking about ways that we find new ways to start fighting. We find amenable ways to not ignite a full conflict or something else, because that is not about what this is. Everything else is about something else. If it's not about this, then it's not about this. If it is about this, then it's good. And so, there's just a belief that people can go do these extraordinarily stupid things, and they can keep doing these stupid things, but they can't go do something stupid that stops the stupidity, which is what I just don't understand. I'm going to post this. It's probably wrong, but, yeah. You people are just a bunch of dipshits.